The Imperial Fists are the Sentinels of Terra, the Stalwart Seven, a chapter of warriors who have stood against thousands of enemies and never wavered. They are the sons of Rogel Dawn, ancient in honor and grim in aspect. To some amongst their peers and enemies, the nature of the Imperial Fists has two strands: stubbornness and pride. How else do you characterize the refusal to withdraw the 12-strong garrison force on Akara 5 during the 9th Halo Margin Crusade? A refusal made directly to High General Iskydia in the face of assault by a force numbering 1,000 times their own. Likewise, what is there but pride in the attitude of ancient Kaido leaving the strategium without a word, when asked by the War Council of Adrantis to adjudicate a dispute between different commands? Such incidents have earned the Imperial Fists such cognomens as the Stone Men and Granite Born. To a warrior of the Imperial Fists, self-mastery, control and dedication to a cause, no matter the cost, have transcended being mere virtues. They have become part of their body, mind and soul. To compromise is to surrender. To tolerate inefficiency is to embrace defeat. To show weakness is to betray their purpose. A Space Marine is a being of supreme focus. So what else could the Imperial Fists be? If pride means refusing to entertain the flaws of fools or stubbornness means fighting despite the chance of defeat, then the Imperial Fists will always be stubborn and proud to one eye, but we can also look at them in a different light. The Adeptus Astartes are called the Angels of Death. Transcendental destruction is their nature and their truth, but there is another side to them that must be remembered. They are terrifying, brutal, and unforgiving, yet there is a nobility to them. Not in the superiority of their bloodline or position above others, but in the sense that they sacrifice their entire existence to wage war against enemies that would destroy us. They will die in this endeavor. That is a certainty. There are no kind ends for these warriors. Yet they persist. They face what others cannot. They seek victory, embrace death, but never accept defeat. The Imperial Fists embody this nobility above all. They bear all loss and pain as though it were an honor. They endure, and that is the truth of their soul, because to endure is to suffer. The Imperial Fists wear the yellow armor of the 11th Legion from which they originated. Some have said that this is to echo the light of Saul, that the Imperial Fists bear the illumination of the throne system as their skin in battle. The heraldry of the Imperial Fists is a history of their conquests and the cultures whose sons serve in their ranks. At the level of unit and company, the Imperial Fists' heraldry markings conform to the patterns laid down in the Codex Astartes. It is where there is latitude or a lack of explicit rules that we see another face to the chapter. As we will see later, the Imperial Fists are a chapter that draws its recruits from across the stars. But while other chapters who do the same often obliterate those root cultures, the Imperial Fists do not. There are many examples of a warrior carrying their heritage in their personal heraldry, from the clan tattoos of Terra's pilgrim gangs to the Necromundan spider and skull motif that often appears on tilting plates. Likewise, the bond between warriors who survive a particular conflict often persists long after the end of that war. Campaign and unit honorifics are worked into unit markings and badges, such as the star cluster patterns borne by all who serve in the 5th and 9th squads of the 4th Company, whose long-dead members took part in the Aradan defense in the last century of M38. The Imperial Fist's relationship with the Codex Astartes is a complex one. First, it must be noted that the Imperial Fists are close adherents of the Codex Astartes. In fact, they follow its dictates to the smallest detail and are unbending in their interpretation and enforcement of those dictates. It was not always so. Rogel Dawn resisted the introduction of the Codex and the division of the Legiones Astartes into chapters at the Second Founding. It was a resistance that nearly brought about a Legion civil war and earned the incident a name: the Codex Crisis. The matter was resolved, though how is a mystery. It would seem plausible from the close adherence of the Imperial Fist to the Codex that Rogel Dawn in turn instructed his sons to embrace the change of the Second Founding. They then followed that command as they did every other duty placed upon them, with total focus and dedication. The Imperial Fist's nominal homeworld is Terra, but the chapter defies classification as either planet-rooted or fleet-based. They have deep links to several ancient Imperial worlds, Inwit, Necromunda, and Harnish, to name a few. The chapter has fortresses on each of these worlds, and has recruited from them for thousands of years. Added to this is the fact that the chapter also recruits from war zones and worlds that it has contact with. Sometimes the chapter repeats these cycles of recruitment, sometimes not. It would therefore be truer to say that the Imperial Fist's home is the Imperium itself. Inwit was the adopted world of Rogel-born, and it remains a fortress and recruitment world for the Imperial Fists to this day. In many ways, it is the spiritual home of the chapter, a place whose nature and people shaped and continue to shape the nature of the Imperial Fists. Tidally locked around a slowly dying star, it has two faces. One cold, a place of ice crevasses and shard storms. The other burning, a world of thirst and dry bones ground to dust under relentless sun. It is a death world, where the needs of survival dominate every facet of life. Its people are what some might call techno-barbarians. They have technology that harks back to wonders of a lost golden age for mankind, and created their own modest star empire before the arrival of the Emperor. Yet the people of Inwit have resisted change, and deliberately preserved the harsh way of life that cradled Rogel Dawn. Most of them live in nomadic clans. Conflicts between them are frequent but rarely long-lasting. Their orbital docks create some of the finest voidcraft outside the Jovian or Martian shipyards, but on the surface or in their subterranean settlements, there is little sign of any technology that does not serve a direct use. The people hold a well-made lascarbine in higher regard than an auto-devotional Pict projector. Likewise, the survival of any man, woman or child is secondary to the needs of the whole, and the value of every soul is measured by their resilience and cohesion with their clan. If Inwit is its spiritual home, then Terra is the chapter's heart. All the Space Marine legions were created on Terra. Their first warriors came from amongst its tribes, kingdoms, and nations. For most, however, the association has weakened with time, so that now the idea of a Terran-born warrior of the Blood Angels or Iron Hands seems unusual. For the Imperial Fists, the tie has never broken. In honor of their sacrifice and service in a time of darkness, they bear three honors: that of keeping a force on Terra itself, of naming it their home world, and taking the worthy of its sons into their ranks. This they do from two chief sources: the scions of the vast Terran nobility, and from those born to the pilgrim throngs. Select lines of Terran nobility send sons to compete in great tournaments under the eyes of the Imperial Fists. For every son, an obsidian laurel is added to their heraldry. The pilgrim tithe is a different affair. Millions arrive every day on Terra, hoping to reach one of the great holy sites of the throne world. Of those, most will spend the rest of their days moving forward step by slow step. Most will never reach their goal. There are children of the children born to pilgrims who have seen their progress measured in scant miles. Amongst the pilgrim population, violent disputes between sects of the Imperial creed are common. Many of the pilgrim-born are drawn into gangs that fight endless queue wars and procession battles. The Imperial Fists are known to watch these battles and sometimes pluck a young ganger from the middle of a fight, taking them up into the belly of a gunship as the pilgrims abase themselves in the presence of the Emperor's angels. Necromunda has supplied the Imperium with its iron and blood since before the Emperor retreated to the Golden Throne. Its surface is a skin of ash. Hives rise as needle tips piercing a shroud of toxic clouds. Inside the metal mountain of each hive, billions live and toil and fight. The main mass of each hive is a labyrinth of metal and waste. Down in the dark roots of the hives are the sumps, where the runoff from the layers above gathers in lightless pools, and pale, mutated creatures roam in search of food. Above that is a layer of abandoned habdomes and crushed machinery. Desperate settlers, gangs and outlaws live and fight amongst these ruins and never dream of seeing sun or starlight. These gang wars are incessant but important. Not only do they help keep the balance of power between the hive's many factions, but they also provide a pool of hardened recruits for the Astra Militarum and for the Imperial Fists. The chapter supports a fortress keep in Hive Primus, and its warriors are known to venture out into the bad zones in search of promising recruits. While many worlds give their sons to the Imperial Fists, and Terra is their honorary homeworld, their true home is the Phalanx, a vast star vessel. Its size is such that it is classified as a mobile void fortress and a warship. To see it rise beyond the Terminator of Terra and steal the light of stars as shuttles approach, many would venture that it is neither ship nor fortress. It is a world made for war, set free amid the dark. Designed by Rogel Dawn and crafted by the shipwrights of Inwit, it has fought and preserved the Legion's memories for 10,000 years. It is said that when the Primarch first met the God Emperor, he laid the Phalanx before him as a gift. The God Emperor, wise and eternal, accepted and then returned the gift to Rogel Dawn, saying that such a weapon should be borne by a true warrior rather than a king. Since that time, it has fought and endured wars both great and small. Time has not been kind to its skin or bones. Much of the Phalanx has become filled with silence and dust. Banners hang in great chambers that have not echoed to a footstep in millennia. Damage crawls over its hull, and the repairs and additions of long ages sit over its features like scar tissue on the face of a warrior who has passed the time when their sword should rest, but who refuses to quit the field. Despite the rot of age, the Phalanx still endures, and with it the memories and relics of every war the chapter has fought. The scorch marks of half-forgotten battles run across stone floors like shadows cast by the light of old wars. It is not a vessel, it is a world of war, both its waging and its remembrance. The process by which potential recruits become Space Marines is long. Most records indicate that over a decade and a half will pass from the moment they're taken to the time they wear the battle plate of a full battle brother. It is a process marked with arcane techno-ritual, and which discards the overwhelming majority to death or injury. For the Imperial Fists, it is the first and most important crucible that smelts strength from human base material. For a chapter that accepts large battlefield losses, the flow of new warriors to take up the arms of the fallen can never be quick enough. Yet the Imperial Fists make no allowances to the pressures of time or loss. Better that its fighting units go to war under strength than the chapter compromise its integrity. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing and liking. This helps me make more content from our beloved grim darkness of the far future. For now, let's continue. All chapters look for particular qualities in those they select as aspirants. Pharaoh City and individual survival in the Space Wolves, a balance of physical ability and broad intelligence in the Ultramarines. For the Imperial Fists, there are two qualities that they prize above all others: defiance in the face of overwhelming odds and an indomitable will to endure. A young fighter who faces his enemies, bloody but with a weapon in his hand. A youth who crawls miles through the freezing dark to survive an attack by Urgal. These are the souls who the chapter marks and takes as prospects. Indeed, it is not uncommon for the Imperial Fists to take youths on the edge of death and heal them so that they can face the trials to become neophytes. A youth taken as an aspirant faces a deluge of tests and screening rituals. These trials assess every one of their qualities and aptitudes. Hypno-assaults flood their minds with terror. Apothecaries watch the flow of their brainwaves and the function of nerves and fiber. Intricate puzzles of coordination and mental agility must be completed repeatedly under conditions of extreme sleep deprivation, distraction, and pain. An aspirant might be granted rest only to wake in zero gravity, surrounded by blinding lights and slowly draining air, and then must reassemble a weapon from parts spinning in the space around him. Their minds are opened by librarians and their innermost fears laid bare. All the while the chaplains watch for signs of weakness or flaws that might become a seed of failure. Should an aspirant pass these trials, they come to the Phalanx. There they become neophytes, and their fight to become initiates of the chapter truly starts. The process of organ implantation, hypno-indoctrination and training begins. They change physically and mentally, growing to maturity, and then into the form of post-human warriors. Organs created by the God Emperor in ancient times are spliced into their flesh. They begin to lose the past. The concerns of their old identities fall away. New purpose replaces the old. All the while they are evaluated, and the margin for failure narrows to a blade edge. Marksmanship drills are conducted in the disused reaches of the Phalanx against lethal kill servitors. Strategic problems must be processed and solved, while blood is drained from their veins. Without exception, neophytes must perform and assimilate every lesson and test without flaw. The Imperial Fists have a particular relationship with the use of pain in their recruitment, sacraments, and training. The chapter's chaplains call pain the crucible of truth. It is the fire that burns away all weakness and artifice and tempers the soul. Whether this doctrine existed in the chapter's earliest history or developed over time is not known. As it stands, the deliberate application of pain is part of many ritual practices amongst the Imperial Fists. Warriors may subject themselves to neuropain bombardment in devices built for that purpose. Enduring extreme cold or the burning of the flesh of a hand during oath-taking is also common. The scars from these acts are often knotted with the tattooed text of the oath. The engraving of memento mori into living bone without pain suppression is also practiced. Pain is a central part of the trials a neophyte undertakes. The surgical implantation of organs and other procedures are performed without anesthesia and the subject fully conscious. Overcoming pain is the most common factor applied in training exercises and challenges. All these practices hone the core of what it is to be a warrior of Rogel Dawn's line, to endure without breaking or showing weakness. If endurance and defiance are the spirit of the Imperial Fists, then oaths are the expression of their souls. Death will take the Imperial Fists before they break an oath. So it has always been. It is written that Rogel Dawn said that oaths are the bulwark that stands between order and anarchy, and between justice and cruelty. Each Imperial Fists warrior will make many oaths in their lifetime. First and greatest of these is to the God Emperor and to the chapter. A neophyte makes this vow when they are initiated as a full battle brother. In ancient times, these oaths were made in the Temple of Oaths on the Phalanx, but that revered place has remained sealed since the second founding and the loss of Rogel Dawn. The new warriors of the chapter speak their oaths either in the Cloister of Remembrance on the Phalanx or in the great ship's strategium before the stasis-preserved remains of the Primarch's hand. The names of all the chapter's oathed initiates are carved into the walls of the Phalanx, incised into stone, so that the corridors and pillars speak with the silent names of 10 millennia of devotion. Later, a warrior will make oaths to their brothers, to their commanders, and as commitment to individual actions of battle. Lysander is captain of the First Company, a warrior who returned from the halls of torment, who watches the fires burn closer, and yet raises his shield and calls for the enemy to come and face their end. He ascended from sergeant to command of the Imperial Fist's Second Company and then the First. He was lost for long ages and considered dead by the Imperium and his battle brothers. The details of his disappearance and presumed death are not open to those outside of the chapter and the Inquisition, but he returned and with him brought a zeal that burned brighter than has been seen in a generation of warriors, a warrior fury balanced by a greater will. If Captain Lysander is the molten heart beneath the Imperial Fist's skin of stone, then Torgaradon is the cold heart of a mountain. Captain of the Third Company, master of the Sentinels of Terra, he has won victory and paid the bloody price of defeat. In his time he has seen his company taken from him, watched it die twice in all but name, and rebuilt it from the ashes. Mischance or providence has seen him survive the most vicious battles of our age. With the Ultima founding, he has become one of the veterans to cross the Rubicon Primaris. To become both a revered veteran and a champion of an era he could not have imagined would exist when he first took his oaths. Time has stripped him of all that he knew, his comrades, the Imperium as he knew it, and the chapter he was raised to. Yet still he persists, a bastion against which the blades of fate chip and shatter. Zicarius was born at the shrine station of Heptola and assumed an oath name honouring chaplain Ticarius, who selected him and fell in the Battle of Nessus V. Noted by his superiors as having a keen mind for complex application of combat doctrines and a noted skill in small unit tactics, he ascended to the rank of sergeant in the 10th Company, leading squads of neophytes, and then took his place amongst the vanguard elite. With the rank of lieutenant, he has become an expert in combining the Imperial Fist's knowledge of siegecraft with the use of infiltration and indirect warfare. Attached to a series of theatres under both Mortal, Adepta Sororitas, and Space Marine Command, he meets every battle with careful, silent deliberation and meticulous preparation. followed by swift and brutal force. The Imperial Fists are revered as masters of siegecraft, but such characterization risks missing much of their nature. Their ability to both craft and destroy fortifications is perhaps without peer amongst the Adeptus Astartes, but it is important to remember that before they were builders of fortresses, they were crusaders who pursued conquest with focus and ferocity. Their history also reveals a taste for void war, both in fleet action and close, ship-to-ship boarding. Of course, their skill in other facets of war is undeniable, but these three modes of conflict illustrate not only their mastery of battlecraft, but also reveal layers of their character. As the red wound of the Great Rift opened across the heavens, the fallen warriors of the Crimson Slaughter emerged from the storm like wraiths born on a gale. They came in force, dragging a space hulk they had made their nest. Blood Revenant, they called it. Bleeding phantoms surrounded it. Armies of mutants and slave cultists howled in its guts. They reached the astropathic beacon of Isular at the cluster's coreward edge. The Crimson Slaughter harvested the phantoms of their suffering and plunged on, their craft slipping in and out of the warp, as the storm wind carried them on towards the cluster's populated systems. Out in the dark, a war group of Imperial Fists vessels heard the astropath's death screams. Fighting against the flow of the Immaterium, they met the Crimson Slaughter as the Blood Revenant breached reality. Boarding torpedoes were loosed from Imperial Fists ships. Fired at near point-blank range, they struck across the Blood Revenant's skin and punched deep. Imperial Fists warriors drove deep into the space hulk. The Crimson Slaughter counter-assaulted, but the Imperial Fists shifted forces from one beachhead to another. Tech Marines aboard the warships and boarding force had identified the remains of warp engines deep in the space hulk's mass. Overlooked or seen as unimportant by the Crimson Slaughter, these engines were the key to the Imperial Fists' assault. Once each of them had been secured, the Tech Marines began their work while their battle brothers held off relentless assaults. Once the boarders withdrew, the warp engines detonated. Parts of the Blood Revenant flickered in and out of reality. Mile-wide sections of compressed metal crumbled and scattered into the ghost winds. Moments later, screaming voids opened in the heart of the space hulk, and the whole mass tumbled back into the hell tides that had spawned it. Talixetaka was a night world set to rimward of the great naval base of Hydrafa. A linchpin of order, it was a key world in its subsector. Then the Great Rift opened and all contact with Talixetaka ceased. Decades passed. When the warp gusts around the rift's edge receded, scout vessels found that the Night King of Talixetaka had claimed neighboring systems as his domain and seceded from the Imperium. A Reconquest force gathered under the command of Imperial Fists Lieutenant Darcio. Given the field title of Crusade Legate, Darcio led a battle force of Imperial Fists, drawn from the 2nd, 7th and 10th Companies, a contingent of the Red Templars, and elements of the Black Consuls chapter. His forces prepared, Legate Darcio gave the order, and the Reconquest force began its work. Darcio and his command council had concluded that Talixetaka and the throne of House Ordegia was the keystone of the rebellion. Conquer it, and the other worlds would comply. Strike vessels moved in from the system edge at full acceleration. On the surface of the night world, the False King's army turned their eyes to the brief stars in the skies above. At that moment, forces they had not realized were present on the ground struck. Months before, teams of infiltrators under the command of Librarian Cadmus had linked up with nobles who opposed the False King. Drop pods and gunships launched from strike cruisers as they reached the edge of orbit. Ships fired macro shells and melter torpedoes at keeps and bastions, the fire passing between the descending angels. The first wave of assault lasted 12 hours. Much of the planet and most of its people and military were spared, but to the False King's fortresses the Emperor's angels came with fire. The Imperial Fists took the outer defenses, securing them and trapping the enemy within their own walls. Then they tightened their grip wall by wall, tower by tower. The False King's name was stricken from all records, his ashes cast into furnaces to be lost in fire along with the shadow of his treachery. All those that had followed him knelt and pledged anew to the God Emperor's peace and protection. The Reconquest forces remained for a third of a year. New fortresses rose on the horizon as a reminder to any that might doubt the Imperium's will and the price of rebellion.